All right, everyone, let's get started here today. I'm super honored to have Rebecca Jackson join us today as she talks about her experience, Community Forward San Francisco, as well as the Women's Housing Coalition. So let's get it started. Um, okay, so do a little biography first, but I'm sure for a lot of you, she doesn't really need an introduction. But Rebecca is a powerful advocate for formerly incarcerated women and their children in San Francisco, particularly those experiencing homelessness and seeking to change their lives. Her personal experiences with domestic violence, racism, addiction, and incarceration fuel her desire to be a positive role model. As she's recently appointed the Vice President of Reentry and Public Affairs at Community Forward San Francisco, Rebecca's leadership has significantly impacted the community. Rebecca extends her advocacy to women's rights in San Francisco and is an active voice in several coalitions, including co-chairing the Women's Housing Coalition and the Women's Working Group. She's also a member of the Reentry Council for Women's First subcommittee and serves on the Hamilton Families Board. Additionally, Rebecca is a proud proprietor of Rebecca J's Decor and Event Management, which has been operating in the Bay Area for over 5 years. So without further ado, welcome Rebecca Jackson.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you guys hear me okay? Yes? Okay. Just a couple of housekeeping things. If you see me looking to the side, it's because I have a second screen up. Just trying to kind of keep me where I'm supposed to be and what would like to share with you guys today. Thank you for reading my bio, something that I had to write, trying to offer to other people, people were asking for a bio. And so that was what I wrote several years ago, actually. But thankfully, it's still hyper relevant. So I do appreciate that. I think I am calling out the bio because I see a lot of familiar faces in this space. And some of them, if you describe my bio, I think that is like the basic high level view of who folks know me to be. And because of, I always participate in crucial conversations. I think this space is hyper important. I'm extremely honored to be chatting with you guys today as the person that is sharing their work and their story. But bringing it back around to the bio, that I think that even though I see a lot of familiar faces, there are parts of my story who make me who I am that I don't share day to day. And I just feel like this is a good place to just spend a few extra minutes talking about sort of who I am, because I think that it informed my journey, and 1000% is what drives me in the work that I do today. So if you guys will indulge me, I'd like to just talk a little bit about who I am as a person. I am 52 years old. Um, Obviously, I'm African American. That's how I identify. But I am also a person who identifies as a survivor of a lot of trauma. And when I tell folks, oh, I have a lot of lived experience, I sometimes get to joke that I have experience in all the experiences. And what I mean by that is trauma. I've survived abuse. I have dealt with racism from an early age, uh, bullying, addiction, incarceration, homelessness, uh, loss of custody of my children. And so touching on all of those things that can impact folks. So when I say I have lived experience, it's not just in one from one view. I'm a mom of children who are grown now, and today I'm a grandmother. I have a 5-year-old grandson, and I think that is relevant too. But I think I spent a good portion of my life stuck in difficult to escape cycles. And I just would like to talk about that. I grew up in a multicultural family. I grew up in Southern California. And during my early years, some of my earliest memories are of my parents, my dad physically abusing my mom. I think I was like 6 or 7, and it's weird the things that you remember. Like I remember being that small and sort of having them be in a physical altercation, and like my brother and I sharing bunks, and him like me going down to the bottom bunk where he was at, and even at the age of 7, like holding him, like consoling him because he's 18 months younger than me, and sort of like crying and rocking and uh sort of witnessing that. Now, the physical abuse didn't happen every day in my home, but it happened enough that my mom left. And so being abandoned also, when my father was not, when he wasn't drunk, he wasn't a bad guy. um but that physical abuse sort of happening in the home, and at the same time, and the reason why I really wanted to call out my age is because I was 8 in 1980, and being mixed in 1980, mixed race, wasn't common like it is now. Do you understand? And so my mixed heritage was the source of the majority of my being bullied at school, to the point, and it was really hard to figure out what my identity was, because we lived mostly in Black neighborhoods. But when I was at school, like I was too like white for the Black girls, and I was too Black for the white girls, and I didn't really fit in. And you know, Zebra and Oreo were my top nicknames. But even physically bullied, for of course the thing that was completely out of my control. Um, so there was a lot of turmoil for me very early, both at home and at school. And it was rooted in my sort of identity of who I saw myself as. And looking back, I know now that I consult myself with through food. So I eat a lot. And so then, like moving into my formative sort of teenage years, I really felt ashamed of who I was because I was overweight. So I was, almost 200 pounds in the 6th grade. Um, and again, sort of shame rooted in the color of my skin, my weight, being ashamed of like who my parents were, and sort of that multiple sort of, and hiding the abuse that was happening in the home, because actually my mother returned, and the abuse had stopped, the physical abuse had stopped, but not the emotional and mental abuse. So, and I think that is very core, also. But sort of fast forwarding a little bit, what that looked like for me going into high school is that I started to take a lot of diet pills. And by the time I was 17, I was completely addicted. And the addiction was really spurred on by, I had dramatic weight loss. I was 17, and I felt like people could see me. I felt sort of like light. And I think I shared that because I was hiding the addiction to the pills and stuff. Um, but I was like, felt like I was coming into my own at school. And I think that that informed the sort of desire to stay sort of addicted. But what happens in addiction is that it never just stays where it's at, it sort of always progresses. And so what got rooted in sort of this original sort of addiction around sort of weight loss, and you'll hear the same story with people who get hurt, right? They get hurt, the doctor prescribes them pain medication. Fast forward 2 years later, they're buying heroin, off the counter, off the corner. So mine is sort of similar in that. But what ended up happening with me is that it progressed to not sort of just like using over the counter or doctor prescribed drugs or going to the street to get street drugs, but I really fell into the lifestyle of sort of like drug addiction, drug dealing, sort of into this. I fell very deep into this cycle, and I was arrested the very first time. I think I was 17. The first time that I went to jail for like possession or something like that. So I gave you the big chunk of sort of like the early formative years, and I'm going to spare you the sort of cycle between 17 and 32. What I will share is that in between that time of 17 and 32 years old, I was arrested 17 times, went to prison twice, and spent 10 of those years what we consider sort of like homeless. And my system involvement was really at the same time at that sort of like the height of the war on drugs, which for you young folks is like way past history. But what that meant and why I was arrested so many times is because everything made you a criminal, right? And so everything was arrestable, everybody went to jail, like but sort of also in between in these pockets of like between 17 and 32, it wasn't all spent being arrested. What it was, my cycle was, is that I would get arrested or I would get in trouble. And then I would be like, oh my God, what is going on? I'm not supposed to be this person. Like, I need to fix myself. And I would like have these like spaces of sort of sobriety, of me trying to get my life together, of me trying to change my circumstance. But I always found myself cycling back in. And a few times during those times when I was trying to fix my life, uh, I literally thought like having children and becoming a mother would sort of fix it. But it did not. And so even though I was able to sort of maintain sobriety during being pregnant, uh, by the time my children were in kindergarten or first or second grade, I had cycled back in, not just into my addiction, but was in an extremely abusive relationship, was in and out of homelessness, and not too long after that, found myself back in jail under some very serious circumstances. And I was addicted not just to sort of like the substance, but I actually became comfortable with the lifestyle and the pain that came from the choices that I made. That there was at some point, there was like an acceptance that my situation was my fate because I deserved it. Like, and I didn't deserve anything better than that. And to be quite frank, other people that look like me, Black folks, were stuck in that same cycle as me. What I saw are that folks that were like me were, stuck in the same cycles of sort of addiction and incarceration. Um, you know, and especially for women. So I didn't really get the opportunity to sort of stop that cycle for myself until I was given the support and the structure that I needed to sort of like come out of that. And I spent a really long time working on myself to learn how to not be self-destructive and to figure out where it was in my process where I went back in into it because I could get out, um, but couldn't go back in. And the point of that is that I was able to get out once the support was there. That there was no sort of like moving out without some kind of sort of like bubble, like some kind of help around me that had to look like more than just giving me a roof or, putting me into detox or putting me back into jail. And so my journey out of my cycles of self-destructive sort of choices, in order for me to get that, I had to do that by myself. And what I mean is that my journey out, I was not able to do it with my children. So the option for me was to do it on my own or stay with my children and not get better. And the negative impact of me having to make that choice of being able to stay in my children's life or get better, that those were the only two choices that I had at that time, negatively impacted me, and it still negatively impacts my family to this day. And so I'm sharing all that to say that when I left Delancey Street. I went to Delancey Street. It's very behavior model, sort of long term. I decided to go to Delancey Street because I went in lieu of doing a 15-year prison term. So my choices were very, sort of bleak, do something very dramatic, or I was going to go away for a very long time. By the time that I was ready to sort of graduate and move on from that space, there was one thing that I knew that I wanted to be part of a process that kept women in mind because there were 450 people in that program when I went in, and there were only 26 women. And I mean, it's a hard choice to like let go of your family, right? It's a hard choice. And so I understand it. But coming out of Delancey and coming out of that experience, I saw the same thing happening in San Francisco. That the response for women, that women were not seen, that women were not heard, that women were not supported, that women were not able to stay united with their families, with their children, that they weren't seen. And so exiting out of my situation, I had decided at that time that sort of doing the work that's rooted in women who have survived and their families, if they have them, they don't have to. But that's where the work needed to be rooted for me. And so my exit from my situation, I started working directly for CJ, running a program, a residential program for women as an alternative to incarceration and their children. Because it was like, I was like, I never want this to, my choices, my forced choices to be how it is for any other women. And so and I spent 7 years working at Cameo House and really trying to advocate as much as I could. And then COVID hit. Then COVID happened. And in my process of being at CJCJ and running this program for women, um, twice the facility almost got shut down. And it was in the sort of process of trying to sort of save Cameo. Literally, that was the name of the campaign. Save Cameo Part 1 and Save Cameo Part 2. What happened is that I naturally stepped into this sort of like role of sort of like advocacy, because I'm like, what the F do you mean they want to shut down the only program for women with kids that are coming out of jail? Like this, like I couldn't like understand, like, what do you mean they want to defund it? What do you mean? Right? And so I really stepped into this role where I was showing up at City Hall, I was advocating, I was like trying to find, you know, do you guys feel the same? No, like we have to, like, this is not okay. Especially since everyone we're serving were homeless, right? And I could not grasp how a city like San Francisco, which is an amazing and great city, like, and has all this abundance of sort of like resources and all these amazing nonprofits and all these people that care about sort of helping, how could it be that the city itself, the bureaucracy, when I say the city, I mean the bureaucracy, I'm not naming it or blaming any one person from the city. What I'm saying is, like, how could they, so rich, right, and so much like abundancy and so much possibility, not see how important this population is? And it infuriated me. It still does. It still does. And so when she described, me sitting on sort of this coalition and co-chairing the San Francisco Women's Housing Coalition and being part of the Reentry First Women's Subcommittee and the women this and the women that, and choosing to be on the Hamilton Family Board, all of this was just sort of like a natural sort of, these are natural places for me to try to be, because at the core of who I am and based on all the experiences that I've had in my life, what really drives me is being a voice for me, for the women that are outside right now, that are stuck in a cycle, that don't know how to get out of it, that have children and they have all of this experience and everything that we all go through. And that's why I made you listen to my damn story. All of that informs how I move, like, and who I am. And I know what it feels like to have my hair cut off because I'm Black. I literally know what it feels like to get pulled over for nothing just because of the color of my skin. I know what it feels like to be a woman and have deeply understand that I have a specific response that I need, and that it is a male dominated society. And the response is sort of really, through this lens, this patriarchal sort of lens. And and then that's why I sit, that's why I like demand to have a seat at the table. It's not for me. It's for us. It's for all, it's for the voice. Um and that's what sort of really sort of hyper drives me. And so just earlier this year, I decided to leave my CJCJ family and start working for Community Forward SF, who run a ton of women programs, but are hyper focused on sort of women. And the majority of folks that we do serve under and as a nonprofit are people of color, okay, and sort of women. And transitioning from CJ and doing that really hyper focused sort of work with one sort of very unique niche population, going to be able to work with Community Forward was an opportunity for me to sort of like grow into this role and be working at a nonprofit that can sort of like pay me to do all of what I just described. Because with Community Forward, I was doing everything that I just described, and I was also running a program and had 15 staff, and was like, 2 weeks before I left Cameo House, I always joke, I'm like, 2 weeks before I left, I like was at Costco buying toilet paper, because that's what the hell I did as the director of the program. I made sure there was TP, like that was my job too. And so yeah, so and Community Forward is a much bigger nonprofit. And so just rolling into there, I would love to be able to talk to you guys a little bit about what we do there at that nonprofit, if you guys aren't tired of hearing me yet. No, I'm okay. I'm gonna attempt to share my screen. Here we go. And did it work?
It did.
Oh my God, I'm so lucky. Okay. All right. It's a little by accident, but I'm so grateful right now. Okay, so Community Forward. This slide is really great because Community Forward actually has been around since 1978. It was formerly known as CATS. And in the late 70s, early 80s, the work was sort of like, they were like the original hot team. Do you guys know what I mean by say hot team, the homeless outreach team that runs around? Community Forward was the original hot team, and the people they were really like engaging with were, sort of a lot of trans LGBTQ folks, and actually Vietnam vets, who had come back, were in San Francisco. At that time, the VA was not really helping them, and they were traumatized from war and addicted to heroin, straight up. But the mission of Community Forward is really to help the most vulnerable individuals of San Francisco get off the street, get what they need, and figure out how to stabilize so that people can thrive, and not sort of die. We do have some focus area. We all know that behavioral and sort of, so what we can call mental health and behavioral health and sort of medical needs are really high priority. They really are. And so behavioral health, mental health is top for us. And our approach, it's very, very important to this organization that everything that we do is trauma informed. Okay, so all of our programs have a behavioral health sort of component to it, and then we do have like there's a medical aspect to it too, because if people can't walk, or they have like these medical issues that are harming them, that needs to be addressed as well. So we've been running medical respite for a really long time. And medical respite is on Mission Street between 7th and 8th at 1171. I'll be sharing you guys all of our little stuff. But that's in partnership with the Department of Public Health. And we actually run a managed alcohol program. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with what that looks like, but that program is actually really successful, because we always talk about all the street drugs, but I'm going to tell you, alcohol is a beast. Um, and then we do housing. So currently, we have two permanent supportive housing facilities, one at the Coronado and Eddy Street, um, which we know is also sort of really vital, and we know that the city needs sort of much more of. Sorry, my computer is so sensitive. But then we also focus on, have a huge focus on women. So we run two places. We have, it's called a woman's place, but a woman's place has a 24-hour drop-in. I'm gonna be sharing the address for that, but it's right at 13th and Mission under the bridge at the city center. 24 hours, 7 days a week. It's the only one of its kind in San Francisco that's open for women, and that's any women identified person. So when we use the term women at Community Forward, it's that cis, trans, gender nonconforming, but if the individual identifies as a woman, then these services are available to them. And so we have the drop-in site there, and then 1049 Howard Street is a woman's place shelter. So where the drop-in is 24 hours, they can come in and out. We have a health clinician on site, sort of food, they can rest. We have these like beds, there's a lot of safety for them there. And then hopefully like transition to our shelter to continue to get services from us. And then I know that we put the Women's Center on here because our work and some of the stuff that I'm trying to do for Community Forward right now is that we have a vision for opening in partnership with other women serving orgs in San Francisco. We're calling it a one-stop shop. I think that is so like cheesy, but what we sort of envision is tripling the amount of drop-in beds, because right now they're chairs, but we call them drop-in beds. But we have 30 at our current drop-in, and we're trying to bring that up to 90. So tripling the amount of drop-in, and also bringing like our 50 or so spots that we have for transitional or shelter, tripling that as well to 150. But having drop-in long-term transitional behavioral health, mental health, groups and classes, workforce development, all of that stuff in one building, because we know for a fact that one of the hardest things is like continuum of services for folks, because what happens is we engage and we lose them. And we know that having a women's center, we would be sort of replicating something that's already done in LA. It's called the LA Downtown Women's Center, if anyone's interested in that. So I'm moving from sort of like Community Forward as its own, and I only did 2 slides on that because it's not just about Community Forward. I wanted to share with you what we offer. But the San Francisco Women's Housing Coalition, of which Black Women Revolt are members, and who we are and the work we're trying to do is sort of bigger than any one sort of entity. So it's called the Women's Housing Coalition, but you'll see it's Women's Housing and Services. Hello. So we have some of our members on here. This is definitely not just it, but our mission as a coalition is to establish the city priority. Okay, to say collectively, hey, San Francisco, women are unique, our experiences are unique, and the response needs to be unique. And you know what else? Whatever you're offering for co-ed, this and that doesn't work for the population that we want to serve. So we have some like old school, long established orgs that are part of the Women's Housing Coalition. and a bunch of them that aren't on there that are very, very important too. Anyway, so like La Casa, the women's building, yada, yada, yada. So last year the coalition held this retreat, and basically what we did was we said, okay, all of you heads of the city departments and all you like the DAs and the probation people and the and all the departments, okay, mayor's office, come on, board of supervisors, come on, mayor's office of housing, come on, OEWD, office of economic and workforce development. We want to create this table. So we did a retreat where we had everyone come to the room, where women serving providers could present to the city what we think needs to sort of happen. What is the approach? What is the response for women need to be? So Andrea had shared with y'all in an email that she sent out about the state of homelessness. Like, we all know that it's bad, right? We know for a fact that it's bad. And that everybody that we know, all anybody ever talks about is the homeless, unhoused folks in San Francisco. The issue is that very little of what is set up as a response in the city to address the issue actually impacts women. So we made this handy dandy slide that we shared with them. It's the exact same one that we shared with them. Andrea shared with us that homelessness is up 7% since 2022. And her number that she shared of the 2019 report said that 44%, and I think I'll get to that, because first what I want to tell you is that what we saw was that 41% of 100% of people that said they were homeless identified as a woman. So that's nearly half, you guys. Nearly half of the entire homeless population that we see outside. Do you see that number, that 3,100? Okay, that's not okay. Okay, first of all, but whatever. That's why we got it in red, because that's what it makes me see. Pisses me off. But 41% identify as women, but only 5% of what the city has earmarked is earmarked specifically as a women's space. That's a total shelter, transitional, and recovery. So when you see this grid, you can see the disparity. If nearly half of us are women, how the hell is it possible that only that much of the response is identified as for women? And I mean, is this my story or what? Is it not time to fight? Because what that graph is showing you is that women are sort of invisible in the overall sort of big issue of homelessness and all the things, and who's in behavioral model and who's being mandated to program and who's harm reduction, all that sort of infighting that we see around the homelessness, who's addicted, and all that stuff. Women are just, we're not even seen, we're not even considered. And so the sad part about that is, of the 41% who identify as women, 44% of those, so nearly half again, identify as survivors of violence. Half, nearly half. That's a lot of people. And we believe that that number is underreported because women who are surviving violent situations, and I'm talking sexual violence, I'm talking IPV or domestic violence, I'm talking about the street violence they encounter because they're outside trying to survive. And it's a sad, people walk by unhoused folks, right? Who because they smell, let's say. Do you know that we had a woman come through our program that told us that she doesn't shower on purpose so that she will not be sexually assaulted while she's sleeping outside? It's her defense, y'all, because she has been assaulted that many times. And there was something that was done, I think it was on the East Coast, that said that women were they were 106 times more likely to be assaulted in a co-ed shelter than they are to be in one that was women specific. 106. That's not even a real effing number. More than 100% chance that you're going to get messed with if you go into the. So what we're seeing is that women aren't going into the co-ed shelters on our streets, y'all. They're not. What they're doing instead is they don't shower for a week and they're figuring out how to survive on someone's couch, in a car, or under the bridge. And yeah, we got to change that. So what we did was we come up with 6 core solutions that we presented to the city as a whole. We got to coordinate our services, y'all. It doesn't do any good if Black Women Revolt over there in the Bayview and Community Forward's over there on Mission and 7th, and the women's building's over there, and La Casa's over here, and Mary Elizabeth's over there, and we don't talk to each other. And we definitely not talking to the cops who are arresting everyone, right? So there has to be this coordination of sort of services, and we think investment in data, because the city is quick to talk about sort of like what happens with the city is that women get lumped into families. You see? They get lumped into the family responsibility. They say, oh no, women have a place to be, I guess, if I have a kid. You know, but it's missing a whole section of women or women identified or trans women or trans sisters who don't fit into that family response. So we don't get to see. And so HSH, and I'm not blaming anybody, but them, the bureaucracy, they put out all these like data points, and the women that the orgs that serve women go, well, where did you get that number from? Because y'all didn't ask us. You know what I mean? So like data is really important, especially if we're going to identify women as a particular population, as a specialized population. We've seen it done with the vets, and we've seen it done recently with Tay. Right? If I say that to you all, you understand that sort of like the Tay response or the Tay this, the Tay services, they're named, right? And we're really trying to advocate that sort of for women. And at the core of everything that we do for women, with the city to try to safety is the safety is at the heart of everything that we have to do. It needs to be integrated into our systems. It needs to be integrated into the way we engage. It needs to be integrated into our sort of like housing models. Yeah, because when we shared that about the co-ed shelters, everyone around the table, you know, they acted like so shocked. Yeah, you know, but it's hard to do that if you can't stabilize what already exists. So I'm back to sort of that story, right? And I know that people that run programs understand what I mean, that every year we got to go to City Hall to battle to stay even funded. So part of sort of how we have these solutions is that we have to stabilize what already exists, because we already know it's not enough, right, y'all? Like, how can they even think about shutting down the only one of something when we need 5? But yet you're like erasing us out of your little budget. You know, and then we wake up on the news and California is the 5th largest economy in the goddamn world. And San Francisco has the budget that it has, and y'all are trying to defund crucial conversations. You ain't gonna fund what we're trying to do. It doesn't make any sense. So stabilization, and then trying to work on fixing sort of like the flow of how things happen. Like, where do we engage with women? Where do they get lost? And that sort of, and that's why a women's center is our dream, right? Because we want to hold, and it needs to be collaborative, right? Because if they walk in and they need support from, um, if they walk in and they need support from, like, say, Black women, and I'm only saying because y'all, this is who we're in, but what if they need to be with La Casa? Like, they need a specific response. What if they need this response? What if they've been trafficked and they need to go to a safe house? Like, what if, like, we need to be able to centralize that, and we really need to work really hard to make women a protected class, in the coordinated entry system, which we're getting a little headway on that, where they are doing sort of like a DV, uh, uh, and so Kimberly Ellis, who runs the Department on the Status of Women, this is what she said. She said, you can see how a city prioritizes its people when you look at the way that it invests. Like, and where is the funding? Like, basically, she's saying, hey, the funding, wherever the city puts the funding is what they care about. And so that's where we're sort of like at. Like, fund us, man. Like, women matter. And I brought this slide up because we are making a little bit of headway. It's very slow and we feel like we're hamsters in a wheel. But just this past March, the Women's Housing Coalition worked with the city. There was a $300 million housing bond that was on the ballot. And what we were able to do was to get them to carve out and name on the bond in writing that 30 million of the 300 would be earmarked specifically to respond to survivors of violence, sex trafficking, and yada, yada, yada. And it was a huge win. This is a win, but I'm telling you guys, the win was to get the language on the bond and to have the city recognize for the very first time that survivors get a piece of the goddamn pie. And it passed, y'all. And the Women's Housing Coalition and all of our friends were out there stomping and saying, hey, we need to get a piece for those who identify as survivors in every bond. And so we're excited to have that momentum going. There's a huge BAFA bond coming out in November. That's Bay Area wide. And we intend to make sure that now that we've done this unprecedented thing by having, and I'll just tell you guys this piece because it matters. You're not allowed to say women when you're doing something like a state bond or something that like that is big like that. So we got identified as survivors because identifying women would be illegal because everybody should be able to qualify. So it does mean anybody that identifies as a survivor, but it's like something like 94% of people who identify as survivors are women. So we view it as a win for women, even if women is not specifically named. And there was a broad support for you guys. And I know we're running out of time, but broad support out in the city when we're talking to folks. They think that women matter. And so, yeah, I think I will just end with this. I have added my contact information because I'm hoping that some of y'all will reach out. And the only other thing I cared about putting on this slide is please tell all of your people about the drop-in. Yes, we're full every night, but I don't care. If a woman is outside and they call you guys or someone says, hey, they don't know where to go. If they get let out of jail and it's 2:00 in the morning and they don't know where to go and they somehow end up at your door or in your phone or emailing you, shoot them over to us, because what we're not going to do is leave any woman identified person outside by themselves and with nowhere to go. I don't know how to stop sharing. Oh, there it is. Stop share. Anyways, thank you guys so much. I've literally talked for 50 minutes straight. I am so sorry, but I am glad that a few of my friends on here got to hear a little more of my story and how it sort of informs my work. So if you see me out there and I'm like, I literally talk at City Hall the way I talk to you guys. I was like, this is effing wrong. Like, I do not care. Like, I'm bringing the passion and the experience and the frustration and the hope and the love and the collaboration with me, like in all of these spaces. So I think that was the last thing I just want to let you know. This is who I am. I'm not somebody different with y'all than I am if I'm sitting in, in some meeting at City Hall. It is what it is.
That is very true. This is Pam, who is not working today, so I'm not here. But I wanted to say, if you can put the screen share back up, Dulce has put something in the chat box asking, is that the same number that they should call for the 24/7 drop-in?
100% right. Here you go. Yes, and you see my number next to it because I think our drop-in is severely understaffed. And the people that are desks are oftentimes running interference and doing security and helping clients. And so I'm only saying that because someone said they tried to call, no one picked up. And I think, like, if it's 2 a.m, I'm not picking up that line. But I'll just tell you, if I wake up and it's 8 a.m, I'll definitely call back. So if anybody has any trouble, the address I think is more important. Only because if you get someone that needs help, you could just tell them go to 211 13th Street, go there right now. And it's always open, whether they pick up the phone or no.
Wow, that was so inspirational, so motivating, so beautiful. Does anybody have any other questions at this moment for Rebecca?
I do apologize. She did say there were supposed to be questions, but I just talked too much. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. Any last questions? But I think one was the 24/7 phone line. So thank you.
I have a question. Where are we with the Women's Center in terms of coalition? How can other people get involved? More voices means more power. How do you feel about that, or any advice or information you want to share?
I will say that I will just share with y'all that we did identify a site that we thought would be perfect for the Women's Center. And we did a capital campaign. We were ready to sort of purchase the building. And we have come up against a lot of NIMBYism. And if you guys don't know what I mean when I say that, is there's a lot of not in my backyard. And I think folks have, when they think of sort of like our unhoused neighbors who are outside, they have a specific thing in mind that everybody's going to be outside, like shooting up drugs on the street and using the bathroom and scaring any potential customers away from their business and in general making things unsafe. And I think I'm encouraging anyone who wants more information about the Women's Center to reach out to me. We want to work with everyone. Safe House, Black Women Vote, Glide, the DA's office for the victim. We have big plans to get this thing popping. I think we are in need of general support to say that when we build what we build, that it will be safe, and that it's just sad that we're getting stopped from moving forward when there's all this consensus, like people care about women and people want to fund women, and we like have a plan, and we have all these partners in this collab, and we have this whole like plan. And really, it's like, you don't want us to be on Market Street because it don't look good. Like so there's just a lot of sort of like, and so what we're saying to the city right now is like, okay, well, if you don't want us to have that building on Market, where can we go? Like, if y'all are the ones saying, no, not there, because it doesn't jive with the revitalization of downtown, but it's literally housing for women. And if you go to our drop-in, you don't even know it's there. It's that quiet. It's that safe. Like, crime is not happening outside. People are not outside getting all effed up and doing all that, because like the people we serve want to be in. They're seeking safety, literally. So it's like, really just communicating around that, and sort of, I think we will be reaching out to get sort of like more support around sort of just like advocating, that women need the space. And like, I mean, Twitter, Elon Musk doesn't even want to be here. He like left. So like, can we get the Twitter building? I mean, hello. I know it
That
makes
would be
a joke,
amazing.
but I'm just saying, nobody wants to be on Market Street. They're all leaving. Whole Foods is gone. You know what I mean? Like, what? Like, housing for women, would that be that bad if we had like workforce development? And I'm just saying. So thank you for asking that, Pam. I think reaching out, we are trying to grow our membership. Our coalition just receives funding from Blue Shield of California, so we're real. And people believe in the work of the broader coalition. And I think, you guys will hear much more about us as we can afford to get the word more out there.
I don't want to hold everyone up unless you have a last minute question, anybody on the chat, but I was hoping that I could have everyone, perhaps if you are still here, to share your screen. I would like to do like a screenshot real quick of everyone in the chat just to show our support to you. Sorry, one second. Okay. All right. How do I do this?
My old boss used to do this at our like our Zoom staff meetings. She'd be like, okay, everyone, come on camera and say cheese.
Do you know how to do this?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Command 3.
Shift Command 3.
It's a good thing for funders as well, so that they know we actually did what we said we did. So we appreciate you guys being here.
100%. Yay. Everybody.
Okay, how does this work? Okay, one second, one more second. I'm gonna get everyone on here. Okay, one,
Yeah.
2, 3. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you so much for coming and telling us your whole story. We really, really appreciate it. And just stay tuned to all the work she's doing at Community Forward and Women's Housing Coalition.
And
Thank
send
you.
your women. We want to help everybody, so let's work together.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Rebecca. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Pam, I can't wait to talk to you. Okay.
I know we'll talk after, but I'm not working, remember? But
Bye.
yes.
Get off.
Bye.
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 Thanks, everyone. Take care.